Atal Bihari Vajpayee, one of India's most admired and towering politicians, was laid to rest today with full state honours. The mortal remains of former Prime Minister were cremated at Smriti Sthal in New Delhi as thousands of his grieving admirers turned up to bid adieu to the charismatic leader. I'm Smriti Rastogi and here are the headlines. Mortal remains of former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee cremated with full state honours at Smriti Sthal in New Delhi. Ashes to be immersed in every river in Uttar Pradesh, including Ganga, Yamuna and Tapti. Cutting across party lines, scores of leaders pay their respects to the departed leader at the BJP headquarters. President, Vice President and Prime Minister lead host of dignitaries in condoling the demise. Thousands line up on the streets of Delhi to pay their respects to Vajpayee. Prime Minister Modi, BJP Chief Amit Shah joined 4-kilometre-long funeral procession. Vajpayee, a great son of India, says President Ram Nath Kovind. Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu describes him as a man who only made friends, no enemies. Prime Minister Modi writes that Vajpayee's spirit will continue to guide us as we build the new India of his dreams. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi leaves for Kerala as state is put on red alert for more rains. Defence forces and disaster response teams put up makeshift bridges as thousands reach relief centres. Over 164 lives lost so far, says government. The situation in flood-hit Kerala continues to be grim. According to the official figures, so far 164 people have died since the flooding began on August 8th. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will take an aerial survey of the flood-ravaged state on Saturday. The National Crisis Management Committee that met for the second time on Friday has asked for the mobilization of additional resources to all agencies who were engaged in the rescue and relief operations.
Kerala's worst floods in a century have so far claimed nearly 200 lives. More than 2 lakh people are being forced to live in relief camps. Officials said on Friday that more trouble is expected as heavy rain pushes water levels higher. The Met Department has forecast heavy rain over the weekend as well. The floods began 9 days ago and so far over 160 people have been killed, some in landslides. All 3 branches of the armed forces have been mobilized. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will take an aerial survey of the state on Saturday. The army is using dozens of helicopters and hundreds of boats in the rescue operations.
In view of a fresh spell of floods inundating other vast areas, we have deployed our forces over there in 7 districts. These teams are engaged in basically rescue and evacuation works, medical first response, then they are tackling the situations arising out of landslides, building collapse, and also assisting the state administration distributing relief materials.
By 4:30 in the morning, we were informed that water was rising up like hell, and we did not know what to do. And then we were shifted to the first floor. Then we could see that both sides of the road, it was completely covered with water, more than our height.
The Indian Air Force is airlifting and shifting flood-hit victims to safer places. Defence forces and disaster response teams are busy putting up makeshift bridges and clearing roads. Kochi Airport is shut till August 26th and the DGCA has asked all airlines to operate more flights from Kozhikode and Thiruvananthapuram. DGCA has also capped airfares to Kerala. So far, 80 dams have been opened to release water. Southern Railways has dispatched 3 special trains carrying water to the rain-ravaged state, where drinking water supply has been hit in many parts. Over 1 lakh water bottles would also be sent through other trains bound for the state. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And to get a wider perspective on this, we'll go across to Mr. K.J. Alphonse, Union Tourism Minister, who has been deputed by the centre to coordinate the relief and rehabilitation work in Kerala. Sir, thank you so much for speaking to Rajya Sabha Television. Sir, how grave is the situation in Kerala and what is the scale of damage?
Kerala is completely devastated. This is the worst floods we had in 100 years. I think the last big flood in Kerala was in 1924. 12 districts out of 14 districts are completely ravaged. We have now 3,15,000 people in our shelter homes and who are being looked after there. And on a conservative estimate, we have something like 60,000 people. Possibly it could be 100,000 people who are marooned in their homes. So it's a very difficult task. The Honorable Prime Minister has been taking a very keen interest, talking to the Chief Minister many times over the past 1 week. The Home Minister has taken a very personal interest, so has the Defence Minister. Now, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guards and the paramilitary forces have been working here. We had 18 helicopters operating today, and tomorrow we'll have 22. So everybody is here with equipment. But the magnitude of the problem is so huge that to evacuate so many people, now it's actually pretty difficult to evacuate people through boats because we have these massive rivers which are hugely swollen with big current, strong currents. So it's not possible to operate the local boats. So we need a very large army boats, which are quite a few are here, but we need many, many more. We possibly need more helicopters, but the problem is where do we operate from? Because our Calicut and Trivandrum airports, which are now functional, are kind of saturated, so they have started operating. Also from Coimbatore. So the Centre has provided all the assistance. The Prime Minister has assured whatever state asks for would be given in terms of relief and assistance. So with the Honorable Prime Minister coming tomorrow and having taken an aerial view, I guess things, it takes you to the next higher level of involvement by the Government of India.
Sir, which are the worst affected areas in the state? Mr. Alphonse, which are the worst affected areas in the state?
Yeah, basically 2 districts. One is Pathanamthitta, and there, of course, in Pathanamthitta we have Chenganur, Tiruvalla, Arambula, and Korancheri. So these are the worst affected. Rani was badly affected, but all the people have been evacuated. Then in Trichur district we have Chalakudi, which is absolutely kind of uncontrollable. The river is swelling. We have thousands of people marooned there. Of course, the entire Alapi district, which is actually pretty low-lying land, the entire district has been underwater for the past 3 weeks. And so things are really bad. All the dams have been opened, so still more rains are predicted. So it's not easy to handle these things. Of course, Kerala has an extremely good system of protocol in terms of evacuating people, in looking after them in the relief camps. So they are being provided food and clothing and medicines, and they are looked after well. But our big worry is people who are marooned and how to evacuate them, and that's the big worry. And if you can't evacuate, how do we give them food? I mean, to something like 60,000 to 100,000 people, how do we airdrop food? So these are some of our main worries.
And what are the precautionary measures taken by the government to deal with the situation, considering the fact that Met Department has predicted heavy spells of rains during the weekends?
Yeah, so what we can do is, see, what we are planning is we don't expect the water levels to rise much higher because they're already swollen so much. So, but we don't expect the water levels to go down. So now, with so many people marooned, something like 60,000 people on a conservative estimate, for our first priority and the big job is to evacuate these people and to provide them with food if we can't evacuate them. So this is a big deal, and we are asking for more helicopters. We are asking the Army to give us more boats, which are strong boats, which can travel in strong currents in the river. So these are some of the immediate steps which we are taking.
And Mr. Alphonse, the situation right now is very grave, but by when should we expect normalcy to return to the state?
Well, I'm told we're going to have pretty heavy rains in quite a few areas, especially in those areas which are already submerged, heavy rains. And we're going to have rains going up to Monday and Tuesday. So it doesn't look very, very good.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and giving us all those details on that latest news from Kerala. So there, Mr. K.J. Alphonse, Union Tourism Minister, who has been deputed by the centre to coordinate the relief and rehabilitation work in Kerala. Now, the Kerala has seen one of the worst deluge in the decades, and 164 people, remember, have lost their lives since August 8. Moving on to some other developments. We will continue tracking this development further. Remember, Kerala is facing one of the grave situations in the past decades. Over the last few days, Kerala has witnessed devastation on a very massive scale. The southwest monsoon hit the shores of Kerala on 28th of May. So there was all the latest from Kerala. Now we are heading into a very short break. More news and updates on the other side. Stay with us.
गीत नया गाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ, टूटे हुए तारों से फूटे वासंती स्वर, पत्थर की छाती में उगाया नव अंकुर, झरे सब पीले पात, कोयल की कुहुक रात, प्राची में अरुणिमा की रेख देख पाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ, टूटे हुए सपने की सुने कौन सिसकी, टूटे हुए सपने की सुने कौन सिसकी, अंतर को चीर व्यथा पलकों पर ठिठकी, हार नहीं मानूंगा रार नहीं ठानूंगा, काल के कपाल पर लिखता मिटाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ।
Welcome back. Former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was cremated with full state honours at Smriti Sthal in New Delhi this evening. Leaders across political spectrum, foreign dignitaries and thousands of people gathered to pay their tributes to the departed leader. The former Prime Minister passed away on Thursday evening at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences following prolonged illness.
As bugles sounded the last post and uniformed soldiers gave a gun salute, the crowd fell silent as former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's mortal remains were consigned to flames.
अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी का पार्थिव शरीर दैहिक रूप से अब वो हमसे अलग हो जाएंगे।
Vajpayee's foster daughter Namita Kaur Bhattacharya lit the pyre as cries of Atal Bihari Amar Rahe reverberated the air.
गीत नया गाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता।
President Ramnath Kovind, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Congress President Rahul Gandhi and former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh were among the thousands of people at the Rashtriya Smriti Sthal on the banks of the Yamuna, where the BJP patriarch was laid to rest. Several foreign dignitaries, including Bhutanese King Jigme Khesar Wangchuk, Bangladesh Foreign Minister Abul Hassan Mahmood Ali and Pakistan's Law Minister Ali Zafar were also present as Vajpayee was cremated with full state honours. The gathering included governors, chief ministers, opposition leaders, chiefs of army, navy and air force and a host of other dignitaries who paid their last respects to the former Prime Minister. It was a sea of white, with most mourners dressed in the colour of mourning to remember the man who wove together pragmatism and his vision for an inclusive India. Earlier in the day, thousands of mourners poured onto the streets of Delhi as Vajpayee's cortege made its way from his home to the BJP headquarters on Deen Dayal Upadhyay Marg and then to the Rashtriya Smriti Sthal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and BJP President Amit Shah were among those who walked behind the gun carriage decorated with flowers. The crowd was so massive that people spilled over barricades and jostled to get a glimpse of the former Prime Minister. A sea of people also gathered at the BJP headquarters in the afternoon to catch a glimpse of the BJP stalwart. The Uttar Pradesh government announced that Atal Bihari Vajpayee's ashes will be immersed in rivers in all the districts in the state. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And President Ram Nath Kovind described former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's demise as a personal loss for him. Paying his tribute to Vajpayee in a video message, President Kovind said that he was a great son of India who dedicated his life in the service of the nation. He said that his life will continue to inspire many.
अटल जी के देहावसान के अवसर पर न केवल मैं व्यक्तिगत रूप से बल्कि पूरा देश दुखी है। अटल जी भारत के एक महान सपूत थे। उन्होंने अपना पूरा जीवन राष्ट्र को समर्पित किया। उन्होंने सार्वजनिक जीवन में जो मानदंड रखे हैं, मर्यादा का हो, समावेशी संस्कृति का हो और भाईचारे का हो, देश की एकता और अखंडता को बनाए रखने का हो। मुझे लगता है कि ये सभी मानदंडों को ध्यान में रखकर सार्वजनिक जीवन में हर कार्यकर्ता के लिए अनुकरणीय है। अटल जी को मैं अपनी ओर से और पूरे राष्ट्र की ओर से विनम्र श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करता हूँ। अटल जी का व्यक्तित्व एक महान व्यक्तित्व था। उनको मैं मानव नहीं बल्कि महामानव मानता हूँ। वर्षों तक मुझे अटल जी का सानिध्य प्राप्त होता रहा और इस संबंध में एक मुझे प्रेरक प्रसंग याद आता है। जब वो देश के प्रधानमंत्री थे, उसी समय मैं राज्यसभा का सांसद था। संसद के गलियारों में प्रायः मेरा और उनका आमना सामना हो जाता था और मैंने देखा कि ऐसे अवसरों पर अटल जी दूर से ही नमस्कार किया करते थे। इसको देखकर मुझे कभी कभी आत्मग्लानि भी होती थी कि मैं कहाँ एक छोटा सा सांसद और कहाँ देश का प्रधानमंत्री। लेकिन इसके पीछे जो मुझे लगा कि उनमें अहंकार की भावना दूर दूर तक नहीं थी और मैं हमेशा सोचता था कि शायद सार्वजनिक जीवन का अहंकार मुक्त जीवन बहुत अच्छा होता है। ये मैंने उन्हीं से सीखा और अंततोगत्वा मैं अपने जीवन में भी इस विनम्रता को आत्मसात करने का प्रयास करता रहता हूँ।
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrote an emotional blog for the departed former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, expressing his grief at the demise of the beloved leader of not just the BJP but of the entire nation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that he was a guiding spirit, providing vision, cohesion and direction to his people. He wrote,
"Personally, Atalji was an ideal, a guru, a role model who inspired me deeply. It was he who entrusted me with responsibilities both in Gujarat as well as at the national level. It was he who called me one evening in October 2001 and told me to go to Gujarat as the Chief Minister. He was the rarest of human beings who touched and inspired everyone he met. He was compassionate to the core, generous in spirit, warm beyond measure, and kind to a fault. He was deeply respectful of others and gifted with a rare sense of humor that he often turned upon himself. Orator without parallel, he could switch from disarming humor to a lofty vision with ease, with a rare ability to connect with people naturally, to stir them to self-belief and to a higher cause. It was Atalji who prepared the foundations of an India that is ready to take on the mantle of global leadership in the 21st century. The futuristic economic policies and reforms of his government ensured prosperity for several Indians. His thrust on next-generation infrastructure, particularly roads and telecom, contributed to our country's economic as well as social empowerment.
And Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu today expressed grief over the passing away of former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He wrote in an article in a newspaper saying, and I quote, Atalji is a fine example of this maxim. His clarity of thought, strength of convictions, vision for the country, and his idea of inescapable cause the nation needs to take to attain glory made him relaxed, even look detached to the amazement of his peers. His constant smiles, in my view, is a clear manifestation of Atalji's inner core. And several foreign dignitaries were present at the state funeral of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the former Prime Minister, Bhutan King Wangchuk, former Afghanistan President Hamid Karzai, Nepal Foreign Minister, Bangladesh Foreign Minister and Sri Lanka's acting Foreign Minister were present at former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's funeral. A Pakistani delegation led by acting Law and Information Minister Syed Ali Zafar also arrived in the national capital to pay their last respects. And leaders from across the world, including the US and Russia, have expressed grief over the demise of former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. They have recalled his contributions in strengthening bilateral relations and maintaining regional peace. Russian President Vladimir Putin sent a message of condolence to President Ram Nath Kovind and Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the demise of Vajpayee. Putin referred to the former Prime Minister as outstanding statesman. And the US Secretary of State Michael Pompeo said Vajpayee recognized early on that the US-India partnership would contribute to the world's economic prosperity and security, and the two democracies continue to benefit from his vision. He recalled Vajpayee's address to the Congress in 2000 when he had famously characterized US-India ties as a natural partnership of shared endeavors. And the Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena and Prime Minister have condoled the death of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the former Prime Minister of India, and said that the former Prime Minister played a vital role in ensuring stability of the island nation. Sirisena took to Twitter to condole the death of Vajpayee and said, "Today, we have lost a great humanist and a true friend of Sri Lanka." Former Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, was a visionary leader and an ardent defender of democracy. My condolences to his family and millions of his admirers around the world. And that's all we have for you in this edition. Thank you for watching.